When I sold my house to pay for my grandson's surgery, I thought I was saving more than a life. I thought I was saving our family. But sometimes, what you give from your heart becomes a debt in someone else's eyes. My name is David Parker. I'm 71 years old, and I've lived long enough to know that love isn't always returned the way you give it. Years ago, when my daughter's boy, Ethan, was just 9, he was diagnosed with a heart condition. The surgery cost more than any of us could afford. My daughter, Linda, was a single mother. Her husband, Mark, had walked out when Ethan was 2. She worked 2 jobs, barely keeping food on the table. I was retired, living in the same old house I built with my late wife, Margaret. When the doctor said the surgery had to happen within a month, Linda broke down in front of me. She didn't have to say anything. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the same desperation I once saw in Margaret's when we lost our first child decades ago. So, I made my decision that night. I called a real estate agent the next morning. Within 2 weeks, I sold the only home I ever loved. I paid for Ethan's surgery. The boy survived, and I thanked God for that. Linda thanked me too, at least at first. But time changes people. Gratitude fades when comfort returns. And love sometimes gets replaced by entitlement. Years passed. I moved into a small rented apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was peaceful. I told myself it was worth it. Every cent, every memory left behind, because my grandson was alive. But then Ethan grew up. And one day, the boy I once carried in my arms looked me in the eyes, and did something I'll never forget. Life after the house sale was simple. My days started with coffee and the newspaper at the corner cafe. I'd chat with the owner, Mike, an old friend from my factory days. We'd talk about baseball, politics, and sometimes, about the past we couldn't change. Linda visited occasionally. She'd bring Ethan when he was young, and those visits used to fill my world with laughter. He'd run around my small apartment, asking me to tell stories about his grandma, about the garden I used to have, about the apple tree that stood right outside the old porch. Every time he smiled, I told myself I made the right choice. But as years passed, visits became fewer. Ethan grew into a teenager, distant, distracted, always glued to his phone. Linda, now managing some insurance office, got busier. I understood. Life moves on. That's how it's supposed to be. Still, I stayed close. I attended every birthday, sent gifts, and called every week. Sometimes, my calls went unanswered. Still, I called again the next day. By the time Ethan turned 20, I noticed something had changed in him. He wasn't the same grateful boy anymore. He had grown proud, maybe too proud. His friends drove expensive cars, wore designer clothes, and he wanted to belong. I could see it. Linda once mentioned she had given him access to the savings she had built, the same account where I had quietly deposited small amounts over the years, thinking it might help him one day. But when I hinted that he should save it, maybe invest wisely, Ethan just laughed. "Grandpa," he said, "money's meant to be spent, not buried." I didn't argue. I never liked arguing with young people. They have to make their own mistakes to understand the value of things. Then, last summer, everything changed. Linda called and said she was moving to Chicago for work. Ethan, now 22, decided to stay behind. He said he wanted independence. He had a part-time job at a tech store and shared an apartment with friends. He came by one evening, the first visit in months. "Grandpa," he said, leaning back on my couch, "you should sell your car. You don't drive much. You could use the money." I chuckled softly. "You sound like a businessman now." He grinned. "I'm just saying, you did it once for me. Maybe it's time you do something for yourself." I didn't think much of it then. But soon I realized, his smile wasn't as innocent as it used to be. A few months later, I received a call from my bank. They said there was a withdrawal request on my account, an online transfer of nearly $12,000. I was confused. I hadn't made any such request. My hands shook as I asked for details. The name connected to the link device was E. Parker. It took me a moment to understand. Ethan. When I called him, he answered casually. "Oh, that," he said. "Yeah, I needed some help, Grandpa. I'll pay you back." I couldn't believe how calmly he said it, as if he'd borrowed a cup of sugar, not $12,000. "Ethan," I said quietly, "that's not how things are done." He sighed. "Relax, Grandpa. You sold your house once, it's not like you're broke." I didn't raise my voice. I just sat there, staring at the faded photograph of my old house on the wall. The house I gave up to save his life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wasn't angry, just hollow. Something broke in me, quietly, without sound. Days passed, and I waited. Ethan never apologized. Linda never called. When I reached her, she said, "Dad, don't make a big deal out of it. He's just young. He'll learn." But he didn't learn. A few weeks later, I found out from Mike that Ethan had bought a new car. A flashy one. He had been bragging around town, saying his grandpa finally decided to help him out. I didn't defend myself. I just smiled and nodded when people mentioned it. Inside, I made a decision. Revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes, it means letting the truth reveal itself, slowly, quietly, until it stands naked before everyone. So I waited. Ethan called me again a few months later. "Grandpa," he said, "there's a business idea I'm working on. I need a small investment. You've always believed in me, right?" I could hear the confidence, or maybe arrogance, in his tone. I told him to come over the next morning. When he arrived, I greeted him warmly. I made his favorite coffee and asked him to sit. "Tell me everything," I said. He explained how he wanted to start a social media agency. He had a friend who could make it big, and he needed seed money, around $20,000. I listened patiently. When he finished, I nodded. "That sounds interesting," I said. "But I'm not sure I have that kind of money anymore." He smiled. "Come on, Grandpa. You always say you saved for emergencies. What's a better emergency than investing in your grandson's future?" That line stung. Not because of the words, but because of how little he remembered about what real emergencies look like. Still, I smiled. "All right," I said softly. "Let's make a deal." He raised an eyebrow. "A deal?" "Yes. I'll give you what you ask for, but in return, you'll have to do something for me." "What's that?" he asked, curious. "I want you to spend 1 week with me," I said, "here in my apartment. No friends, no phone, no distractions. Just you and me. Let's talk, let's cook, let's remember family. After that, I'll transfer the money." He looked surprised but agreed. "A week? Sure, Grandpa. Easy." When he arrived with his duffel bag, I smiled. I had already planned everything. Every day I told him stories, about my youth, about his grandmother, about the struggles of raising Linda. Slowly, he began to soften. He laughed at old jokes, cooked with me, helped fix a few things around the apartment. By the 5th day, something changed in his tone. He began asking questions about the past, about how I sold the house, about how his surgery happened. On the 7th day, I handed him an envelope. Inside was not money, but a letter. He looked confused. "What's this?" I said quietly, "Read it." The letter was a copy of the bank statement showing the money he took, signed by the bank manager, confirming it was unauthorized. Below it was a note I had written. "I forgave you the day I found out. But forgiveness doesn't erase truth. You took from me what was never yours, and now you must give back not in money, but in character." Ethan's face turned pale. He looked up at me, speechless. "I wanted this week," I said, "so you'd remember who you are before life teaches you the hard way. I don't need your apology. I need your understanding." He sat in silence. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. After that night, Ethan didn't leave. He stayed another week, helping me with chores, asking for advice, and slowly rebuilding what he had broken. One morning he said quietly, "Grandpa, I sold the car." I looked up from my coffee.
Why? He sighed. It didn't feel right anymore.
I paid back the money.
It's in your account.
I didn't need to check. I could see the truth in his eyes.
Keep it, I said.
You might need it someday.
He shook his head. No.
I needed this lesson more. From that day on, Ethan changed. He started working harder, saving and showing up, not because he owed me, but because he finally saw what love truly meant. Linda noticed it too. One day, she called me in tears. "Dad," she said, "I don't know what you did, but thank you. He's different now."
I smiled.
He just remembered who he was. Years later, when I fell ill, Ethan was the one who took care of me. He drove 3 hours every weekend to visit. Sometimes, he brought his wife and little daughter, whom he named Margaret. Every time I looked at that little girl, I saw a reflection of the home I once sold, a home that came back to me, not in bricks and walls, but in love and forgiveness. Now, as I sit on this old porch of my rented home, a home filled with peace, I think about what life really costs. I once thought losing my house was the greatest sacrifice I'd ever make.
But I was wrong.
The real sacrifice was letting go of pride, of expectation, and of the need to be thanked. Ethan's mistake hurt me deeply, yes. But it also gave him something no school could teach: the weight of conscience and the value of redemption.
He still visits often.
Every time he leaves, he hugs me tight and says, "You saved my life twice, Grandpa. Once in the hospital, and once in your living room."
I just smile.
Because I know, revenge doesn't always come in anger. Sometimes, it comes in silence. I never exposed him. Never told Linda, never told the world. I let time do its work. And time, I've learned, is the most powerful teacher of all. If you ask me what I gained after losing my home, I'd say I gained a family again. A wiser grandson, a stronger bond, and peace that no amount of money could buy. Sometimes, revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about making them see. And sometimes, silence is the best revenge.